Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to paint the Virginia rose. This is one more installment on our series for America's 250th birthday. This is our nation's state flower. Well, truth be told, the rose is the state flower. The Virginia rose is actually one of the simpler roses, and since a rose typically is a little bit more complicated to paint, I thought it'd be wonderful if we painted the Virginia rose so we could all say as watercolor artists, which if you're holding a brush in your hand, you are an artist. You can tell your friends that you can paint a rose. This is a very simple 5-petaled rose with beautiful heart-shaped petals. So let's get started. I'm using a mixture of permanent rose, that's perfect, and a little bit of opera pink in the mixture. I'm using a very light wash to begin with, and I laid out my wash on the ends first and feathered it into the center because I want to retain a lighter center because we'll be using a bright pop of yellow in the middle. Then I added a little bit more permanent rose into the mixture, and I'm going to start building some shadow and definition. I'll come in and add some lines and just give the rose some shape. The pictures I'm sharing in this video are just different roses I found from Upsplash and other U.S. agricultural societies that had beautiful pictures of the Virginia rose. I added just a touch of indigo for a few shadows on some of the folds of this rose petal. I learned that the Virginia rose is actually native to North America. It can be found all the way from the state of Virginia to Nova Scotia. George Washington actually had some of these in his garden. However, it was not in what they called a pleasure garden. A pleasure garden was where I suppose they just had pretty flowers and pretty roses. He actually created a hybrid rose for his mother, and things along that line. Most of the gardens during that time were functional gardens that they used either for food or for medicinal purposes. The Virginia rose has a lot of uses. One article I read actually called it the OG, the original gangster. So, which I loved, because not only is it dainty when you look at it and unassuming, it's quite the opposite. I'm using the side of my brush after I've tapped off most of the water and using a dry brush technique. And then I'll use a darker tone of my permanent rose to come under that fold and create some shadow. Other than being a pollinator in a garden, the rose hips were used for food and flavor, and they were also rich in vitamin C. They could be used in jams or jellies, and they help to prevent scurvy. A lot of the chefs during that time were using the pink petals in salads and desserts, and even in liquor. I don't know if I would drink that. But here's where it gets interesting. The roots of the rose were used to treat worms in children. They could wash out sores. They would use it to flush out germs in a cut. And they could even use the seeds and mix that into a flour and use that as a punch of vitamin E. Now I'm coming in with a light layer of ultramarine on the shadows. A bright yellow. You can use lemon yellow or just a Hansa yellow for the center. Will serve nicely, and it's definitely a great way to attract your pollinators out in the middle of a garden. This rose is not bothered with the multitude of petals that most roses have. So it was probably the first flower most pollinators saw. The Homer Laughlin China Company early in the 20th century decided to put the Virginia rose on the ceramic line, and it happened to be one of their most popular sets. I can see why. It's beautiful. I'm using my liner so I can build out the stamen, which are very long. I'm also changing the color of the yellow to a little bit darker pigment, so I chose to use New Gamboge for the stems and then Azo Yellow for the very tips. It reminds me of eyelashes. I added a touch of permanent rose with the opera rose again. And then built a little bit of shadow around the edges to give it some depth. Then I came back in with a little bit darker shade of the new gamboge. I used sap green for the leaves and kept them very simple. I used the very tip of my cat's tongue to build the serrated edges. I always try to let my brushes do the work. In 1986, Ronald Reagan officially declared the rose the national floral emblem of the United States. He said, "More often than any other flower, we hold the rose dear as the symbol of life and love and devotion, of beauty and eternity, for the love of man and woman, for the love of mankind and God, for the love of country. Americans who would speak the language of the heart do so with a rose." Well said, Mr. President. I'll add a light wash of Mayan Blue Genuine in the background, and it's going to just bring that pink to life. What a powerhouse of a very simple rose. And now you can tell everybody that you too can paint a rose. I hope you've enjoyed this painting and learning just a little bit more about our history. Have a wonderful day.